Hey guys, welcome to Introduction to Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB. It's great to have you here. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So first, I'd like to welcome you to the course. Congratulations on taking the first step to becoming a Node.js developer. We now know that Node.js is one of the most important technology to develop cloud-based systems. You will learn how to build API applications which serve the request for front-end systems. Any front-end system like web app or a mobile app can connect to the application which you will learn to build. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. I'm a senior coding instructor at Coding Bootcamps. I'm also co-founder of two startups, Indica Digital and IntelliFlow Systems. Indica Digital is based in Chicago. We provide digital strategy and implementation to entrepreneurs, small and medium enterprises. And we also have a special focus on mortgage technology, where we help independent mortgage lenders with their technology stack. My other startup, IntelliFlow Systems, is fairly new and is based in Pune, India, where I manage highly specialized technology team which builds digital products and services. I also hold double masters in both information technology and management. So this course is made up of two parts: concepts and projects. Concepts are covered through lectures in multiple sessions. Concept sessions are accompanied by hands-on projects. Each project is covered in one session. By the end of this course, you would be able to apply the concepts to actual projects. Okay, so how will you follow this course? So there are 4 steps. Watch concept sessions 2 times and make notes to get familiar with concepts and terminologies. Step 2 is write codes and build project while watching the project videos by following my tips and codes. Step 3 is read the project documents to understand code and programming concepts discussed in the video. And the last step is to build project again from scratch by doing it all by yourself. And to reinforce your training, I suggest you repeat step 4 at least twice or thrice. Alright, so the projects that we'll be covering in this particular course are: the first one is we'll be developing a RESTful API using Express and MongoDB. Express is a framework of Node.js. There's a link I have provided here. I don't have screenshot attached since it's a backend project and we don't have any screenshots, so you may ignore that. The next project is building a user authentication system in which we will allow user to enter their username or email address and their password, and we'll verify those 2 details and allow them to log in into the system. And we'll be using MongoDB as our database. In the final project, we'll be using the same application that we built previously, but instead of using MongoDB, we will learn on how to use SQL. The concepts will be the same. We just have to figure out how to make sure we connect with the database and make sure we exchange the data in the right format. So the requirements for this course are: you need to have a computer with Mac OS or Windows 10 or any Linux operating system with a good internet connection, and you need to understand the fundamentals of programming. You need to also have basic programming knowledge of JavaScript because I won't be covering the very fundamental concepts which are actually very essential for you to learn Node.js. So let's do a quick refresher of JavaScript. In this session, I'll be just focusing on the quick refresher for JavaScript, as well as we'll learn on how to install Node.js. So the first thing is we'll be covering some of these concepts in detail. Some of them will just it's for you to make sure that you brush up on these because these are used heavily throughout this course. So scope. So scope determines the accessibility of variables. So like, for example, if you declare a variable in the start of your JavaScript file, that variable will be accessible through all of the programs that you write, all of the functions that you write in below, right? So that's the scope that is called a global scope. So what if you write a variable inside a function? What kind of scope do you think it has? Right, it has a local scope because that function, that variable will be accessed by only the that function. It won't be accessible outside. Arrow functions. So arrow functions were introduced in ECMAScript 6, and we use pretty heavily with Node.js, as you will see when we start working on the projects. It's just a way of writing the normal function syntax a bit shorter. So here's a distinction between a regular function and a arrow function. In arrow function, you just assign an anonymous function to a variable, and it always returns something back. Loop. Now this is a fundamental programming concept that you should be aware of. I won't be covering loops or arrays in detail. This is just a quick refresher of what we will expect in this course. So you need to be familiar with for, while, and do while loops. So for is you loop through a block of code a number of times. You specify the number of times, and it will run for that specific number of times, that block of code. In the while loop, what we do is unless and until the condition is true, the loop will keep on running. Okay, and in do while, even if the condition is false, the loop will at least run once. Okay, so these are the loops. Make sure you have good grasp of this, because you'll be using this throughout the course, as well as you'll be. This is basic programming concepts. You need them either way. Semicolons. Okay, semicolons are like full stops for your expressions. Same way English language has full stop to make sure that the sentence has ended. We have semicolons in programming languages, especially in JavaScript, where we denote that the expression has ended. These are not mandatory in JavaScript, since JavaScript is an interpreted language. But it's always a good practice to end your expressions with semicolons. Comments. There are two ways to write up comments: multi-line and single-line comments. Now I like to write multi-line comments to demonstrate what I'm going to be writing. So like, for example, if I'm writing a functionality of adding a new user into the system, before I start writing function for that specific functionality, I will mention in a multi-line comment what the code will be in the next few lines. In the single-line comments, I usually try to avoid that, but only and only if necessary, where it is very hard for a reader to understand what you have written. At that point, I will actually add a single-line comment. So literal is any value that is written in source code. So like example, you have number, string, or boolean. Expressions. Expressions is a code that has to be evaluated to a value. So for example, in this case, 300 greater than 19, it evaluates to a Boolean value of true. They can be further classified according to their type, such as Boolean, string, or arithmetic. Types. We know one thing about JavaScript, that it is interpreted language. And if you assign a variable a number, it will interpret as a type of number. There's no specific typesetting that is available in JavaScript. That we have to be very careful about this. Otherwise, it can cause serious problems as the code grows more complex. But JavaScript variables can hold multiple data types and are very dynamic. This is a very good thing and a bad thing. It's a boon and a curse. So make sure you understand what you're doing with types. Variables, again, it's a basic programming concepts where variables are containers for storing your data values. So in this case, for example, you have declared a variable of length equal to 100. That means the variable length will store the value 100. Functions, again, this is again a very important concept, because JavaScript is a functional programming language, and if you don't understand functions, then you won't understand Node.js, or you won't have a good grasp on Node.js. So JavaScript function is a block of code designed to perform a particular task. So like, for example, if I were to add two numbers, it will take input of two numbers, do the addition, and return a result. Okay. Array is a special variable which can hold more than one value at a time. So for example, you have array of objects, you have array of numbers, you have array of strings. We'll be dealing with arrays a lot, in this course. And when you build very complex systems using Node.js, where you get data from the database and also you want to send the data to the front end, you'll be using arrays a lot. Alright, so let's move on to the setup. Alright, so let's talk about system setup. So what you need to do is you need to go to this specific link, nodejs.org, and download the appropriate package for your system. So if you go to that specific link, you will see this web page, and depending on what kind of system you're using, if it's a Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, you'll have to download the appropriate package. Make sure you also look at the system architecture for your specific system and download that appropriate package. I have already installed this on my computer, so I'm not going to be installing Node.js again. But there are other ways you can install Node.js for very system-specific, using very system-specific tools, and we'll see them in a moment. You can also use a tool called Node Version Manager, which allows you to install multiple versions of Node. The reason we use Node Version Manager is because of the compatibility for certain applications. So for example, if you have an application that is built using, let's say, version 1.2, and right now the latest version of Node is about version 12. So if you want to operate the dependencies and packages and the modules that only use Node version 1.2, you'll have to have that specific version installed on your system. And Node Version Manager is an easier way of managing different versions on your system. So the way you can install Node Version Manager is you can just go to a new Google search and you can type in Node Version Manager. You get a GitHub link. That's the first link. You can select it, and you can follow the install instructions that are given over here, and you can install Node Version Manager. All right, moving on. Now, the resources that I was talking about. So for Mac OS, Homebrew is a perfect tool to manage Node.js installation. For Windows 10, we have Chocolatey, and for Ubuntu, we have apt-get. For different distributions of Linux, there will be different installers, but apt-get is specific for the Debian-based Linux distributions. For Windows 10, you can use Chocolatey. That is usually available through the PowerShell. And for Mac OS, of course, you have Homebrew. All you have to do is follow the Homebrew package guide and install Node.js. The next thing you need to install is Visual Studio Code. So we will be coding our applications in a code editor, and I recommend using Visual Studio Code. You can use Sublime Text or even simple Notepad. That is fine. But the reason I encourage Visual Studio Code is because it has an inbuilt terminal, and it's quite easy to work with. So this is the current setup that I'm using. I'm using the Mac operating system. The Node.js version is version 12, and the code editor that I'm using is Visual Studio Code. So what have we learned in this session? So we have learned the programming basics. We did a refresher on JavaScript programming basics that are very important, and we're going to be using them quite a while in the upcoming sessions. And we also learn how to set up our system. In the next session, we will be learning about what Node.js is and why does it exist, and what is NPM and how to use NPM. So I will see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.